Amen. While others are still filing in, our presenter for today, under the topic of the disposition of estate assets, is Rache Boston, and she was born and raised in Oakland, California. Do you know Marshawn Lynch? She does. Do not hold that against her. So she has a little beast mode in her. Don't trust the civil outer decor. She moved to Seattle in 1993 and became a real estate broker in 1998, managing broker with John L. Scott Real Estate for 20 plus years. She has been in the top 3% of real estate brokers in the state of Washington for the last 10 years and top 6% in the country. She is a local and global real estate broker, can help you sell real estate all over the United States and the world. She's a designated luxury broker. That means she's got some good property she can help you get. She mentors brand new agents in the business. She teaches first-time buyer classes, helping homeowners avoid foreclosure, etc. She is the president. The president of her nephew's PTSA at Aki Karosi, okay, middle school in Seattle. And so, in other words, she is worthy of our listening today. So won't you put your hands together and warmly receive Ms. Rache Boston.
Good morning again. And thanks for coming out. Y'all look marvelous. I want to recap what we did over the last couple of weeks and also share with you. I came across a definition of legacy this week, and I thought it was appropriate to bring it here to share with you today. And it came from Hamilton. Defines a legacy as a seed that you plant in your garden and you'll never get to see it grow. Think about that. We talked about wills and the reason for it and how to create a legacy. We talked about life insurance and other assets as part of your estate. Then we talked about probate and trust last week. And now we've had a will, we're in probate, and we've located assets that we're going to distribute to the heirs. So Ms. Boston is going to talk to you about how we go about distributing or disposing of those assets. And she'll talk primarily about real estate. I've worked with her in a couple of cases where it involved personal property, personal assets, such as furniture, cars, and she came up with some creative ways to solve that problem. So she won't be talking about stocks and bonds and other type assets like that. That will be Dennis Williams, Jr., who will be talking to us in a couple of weeks about that. So just wanted to set the groundwork so you understand what we're going to talk about and how it all ties in. We have will, probate, and now we've located the assets inside the estate, and we now have to sell off in order to carry out the wishes of the testator, the guy who wrote the will, the dead guy, and then distribute the assets to the heirs. Please help me in welcoming Sister Rache Boston and give your attention to her. Thank you.
Good morning. Happy to see you guys here. Thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. I've been wanting to do this legacy type seminar. I didn't know it was going to be called Legacy, but I've been wanting to do this seminar for a very long time. This is information that our community needs so bad. And so I'm very excited and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to present to you guys today. I want to thank Pastor Braxton for having the vision to do this type of seminar, because I don't know, I was talking to Brenda and Ray, and I don't know if any other church is doing something like this around here. And so we should feel blessed that we are able to get this information and to get it for free. I do agree with what Ray and Keith said in the last couple of weeks. Real estate is a way to create a legacy for your family. I've always been an advocate of that. And for some families, if it's done right, it's life-changing. And I've seen it happen over and over again. Kevin, can you play the video?
Biggest errors you can make. 58% of American adults have not prepared estate planning documents. That's according to a 2017 survey by Caring.com. We spoke to a Massachusetts woman who could lose the home she has lived in for most of her life because her stepfather did not leave a will.
I'm still in shock at the whole process of what they're trying to do to evict me and my family. Looking at these first thing in the morning makes my day.
Marcelle Harrison is fighting to keep the home she and her family have lived in for nearly 4 decades.
And I said, do you believe this, that I just received this envelope saying that I wasn't an heir to my stepdad?
Her mother and stepfather purchased the then abandoned property for $23,000 in 1980.
My stepdad did 90% of the renovation on his own. He was very proud because we had a place to call our own.
The home, now valued at over $1 million, is set to be inherited by a group of estranged relatives in Barbados.
He passed in 2011. He was very ill, and I had to take care of him 24/7.
Despite being raised by her stepfather and acting as his caregiver, Harrison has no legal claim as his heir. Under Massachusetts intestate law, properties pass to the nearest blood relative in cases where there is no will.
Well, my options right now, I will have to purchase it from the heirs. That is what I was told I have to do. The house means so much. Oh, I don't know the word to describe it, but this is home. To me, this is home.
Harrison hired a lawyer to help her explore her options. Her neighbors also created a GoFundMe page to help her raise money. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger writes about the importance of having a will in her new book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do with Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. Jill, good morning. And your heart just bleeds for Marcelle, right? And another example of why it is so important to have a will. She has taken care of her stepfather, and yet now she's in this situation. What can she do?
Well, she's done what she should do, which is she's hired a qualified estate attorney, not someone who closed your house, not somebody who takes care of your traffic tickets, someone who's very familiar with the state law and how it pertains to her situation. I think, unfortunately for her, this is something that has to be negotiated. She says we're trying to negotiate with the heirs and figure something out. But the problem here is, and it raises the hugest issue, this has already occurred. That is why estate planning mistakes are so difficult, because you can't go back and correct them. The person has already passed away.
A lot of people think planning a will happens when you're older in life, but you say anybody that owns property or has children should do so immediately.
I almost think that anybody with a heartbeat should do it, because estate planning is not just the will, which passes your possessions to your heirs, but estate planning takes into account who is going to make health care decisions for me? Who is going to make financial decisions, even if you just got laid up for a while? And I think the most important thing here is that, especially when we have these blended families, step families, second marriages, having these documents in place is incredibly important.
And you talk about 4 essential documents that people should have. What are they?
We start with the will, which is basically instructing the public what's going to happen with your stuff. But there is also a power of attorney. That is someone who makes a business or financial decision on your behalf. A healthcare proxy, who is going to make healthcare decisions on your behalf, and a general letter of instruction. This can be really helpful in just like, how do you want your funeral to go?
And how should you talk about or arrange paperwork with regards to your family and the estate going forward?
I think this is incredibly important because sometimes people pass away, they have all these documents, and you're the heir, and you say, where is everything? Right. So you've got to communicate with your heirs and say, this is where the will is, here are the contact people, here's a list of my bank and investment account statements, here are the passwords to my accounts. You know, people are dying and they are leaving a sort of a mystery. Where is everything? Here is the name and the contact information of the attorney, of the accountant, and here are marriage licenses, divorce decrees, military papers if you need a military cemetery funeral. These things are incredibly important, and I'm begging you, please, to get it done. I know it seems like you don't want to do it. It's hard, but you leave a mess in your wake if you don't do these things now.
Just look at Marcel's case quickly. What is an intestate law?
Intestate means you die without a will. So every state, when you die without a will, the state law actually is the law that dictates what happens next, and that's what happened to Marcel.
Oh, poor thing. Well, keep us posted on what happens next for her. Jill, thank you.
So I wanted to play that video and wanted you to see it is because that's what happens when you don't have a will. And that's what the family is left with. And that's what myself and Ray have to deal with when you don't have a will. So it's very important to have one. So I have a quick story to tell, kind of opposite of that lady's story. So she will not be able to, she's not going to get any proceeds from the sale of the real estate if once it's sold. And she's taken care of her stepfather for 20 years. And, oh, I'm sorry. And so that's the sad part about it, you know, and that was his daughter just as well as his blood relatives, you know, back in Barbados. So speeding it up really fast. So I had a case, and Ray helped me on this. He might not remember, but about 5 years ago, a lady called me. She was actually in foreclosure. Her husband just died. They were in pre-foreclosure, and she needed to sell the house. But she knew that there were kids down in California, and they've been estranged from the dad for 20-something years as well. But now they know that the father has died. He owns a property here. They want to come for the property, and they don't want to give her any of the money because she's the second wife. But by the grace of God, the husband did a will, and he willed everything to her. So she could have been out. She could have been out on the street because she was disabled. She was on a fixed income. They were already losing the house. And those kids would have came and sold the property, kicked her out, and gave her nothing. So in her case, the will saved her. And so that's why, again, it's so important to make sure you have a will. So we were able to sell her house, get a little bit of money, get her into an apartment, and, you know, basically save her life. And so that was the opposite of that story. So it's very important. So I'm going to start my presentation. So before, yeah, I think I got everything. Okay, so I'm going to start my presentation. You guys can follow along here and obviously on the board there. So I just kind of want to go back over a few terms that Raymond talked about that we've learned over the last couple of weeks. When managing an estate for probate purposes, you come across several key terms. These terms include descendant, the person who has passed. Probate. This is a legal process of processing and closing the descendant's estate. Probate may take as little as a few months, or it could take several years, especially if someone contests the will. The probate court also closes out any liabilities if the estate does not have the assets to pay the debts. Testate, again, is you died with a will, and intestate, you died without a will. Administrator, personal representative, and executor are just names that the state uses for the person who's going to carry out the wishes of the will. So, Ray, in the state of Washington, it's when you don't have a will, you're usually the administrator. Is that correct? Okay. And then if you are named the executor if you have a will. And then the beneficiary and heirs are those receiving the inheritance from the descendants' insurance, retirement accounts, estates, real estate, XYZ. So I'm going to try and do my best and refrain from calling the beneficiaries and the heirs, as Raymond did the last couple of weeks, crackish and crack kids. So I might say Ray and them and your cousins and them. So that's just my disclaimer. Okay. So, but y'all know what y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. Okay. In some cases, you may sell the property of the estate. If the descendant had a lot of debt, you may sell the property to pay those liabilities. But if they owe taxes and the estate has cash, you might have to use that cash to pay those taxes, including the real property. You also may choose to sell the real estate if the descendant did not name a beneficiary for it, or if the person named does not want the property. In most cases, you will need permission from the court to sell the property, unless you file an informal probate and you do not need the proceeds of the property to pay the taxes and liabilities. Regardless of the case, you should retain a real estate specialist to help you sell the real estate. The real estate agent with this knowledge understands the probate process and will work within the rules of the court to sell the property. I can't stress the importance to make sure, we will all be faced with this someday, that you hire the right agent to sell your property. All real estate agents don't have the experience of selling estates. And so to make sure that you have the right one, you make sure that you interview and you ask the right questions, and I will be able to give you some of those questions today that you'll find in your packet. But knowledge is key. Knowledge is key, is because I've found over the years that you can lose tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars if you don't have the right person representing you with the estate. The list of services. So I think all of you probably got one of these brochures. I hope you did. If not, they're out on the table. Take that with you. But I'll go over some of the list of services that a real estate agent that's going to help you with the estate, get the property sold, should be able to offer to you. First and foremost, they definitely should be able to offer you a market analysis on the property, a price evaluation. In some cases, the court will require a market analysis from the real estate agent and also a certified appraisal from an appraiser. So they should be able to help you with that. They should also know how to market the property. 100% of the time, I always recommend that the property of an estate is always marketed as is. Seller to do no work orders. We're not remodeling. We're not fixing anything. You take the house as is. Estate inventory and liquidation, as Ray said. So a lot of times in a estate, you will find personal property. So there could be rare paintings and jewelry and clothes, fur coats and baby grand pianos, or whatever the case may be. So you should have an agent that's able to find an estate company that can come out and price these properties for you. Maybe, these items for you, maybe send them to auction to be auctioned off. Because that's more money the estate will be able to have. Title review is so important. Me and Ray are dealing with one right now, where you find a common name, and the common name could be James Brown. And so now Mr. Brown is gone, and the state of Washington has a lien against Mr. Brown. But this might not be our Mr. Brown. Because James Brown is such a common name, the state of Washington is going to take his lien, it could be a child support lien, it could be a L&I lien, it could be whatever it is, and attach it to every single James Brown in the state until you come back and claim to say, that's not our James Brown. Our James Brown doesn't owe this $12,000 in child support. So you have to know that your agent can read title and make sure that those liens are not belonging to the estate. And sometimes we find medical liens and different things like that. So title review is very important. It's because you could be paying a lien and that cuts into the proceeds of the estate. Electronic signing and document management is very important. So nowadays, you might be the estate, your mother lives in Arkansas, and maybe you're here in Washington, and the only way that you can take care of the estate is through, you can't always go to Arkansas every week or once a month to handle these affairs. So you have to make sure that the agent, the attorney that you use is able to do everything electronically. And the court recognizes electronic signatures now, so you shouldn't have a problem with that. But you'll be surprised at how many agents and how many attorneys don't use this kind of technology. I know, it sounds crazy, but it's true. Staging is just another thing that you should have. Most estates, you're not going to stage the property, because I find out that most properties that we sell through the estate process are usually fixers, sadly to say, and so we just like to clean them out. But there's a few times when the house is in good shape, we like to show it in the best light, so we'll stage it so we can make sure that we get the most money for the home. That's what our job is. Also, you could have land, you could have commercial property, you could have income property inside the estate. You want to make sure that the agent that you pick is able to refer you to the specialist that will be able to help you in all of these areas. And then especially if you have land somewhere else in another state. So your parents lived here all their life, but then they were willed property or land in Texas or Louisiana. So now you have to find a specialist there to be able to handle the affairs down there. And let me tell you, Louisiana is the worst state to do probate. I'm going through it right now with my own mother's land. It is, oh my God. It is awful. It's been 2 years and I'm still working on it. And then just notary service, make sure that they can come out. And like with the deed services, that has to do with usually the attorney will file a special bargain and sale deed, correct? And just different things that need to be notarized and things like that. So take that with you. Don't lose it. I got a few more stories to tell, but I want to get through my presentation a little bit because the stories are kind of funny. So let's go through and look at what every executor or administrator should look for. Make sure you have the right legal paperwork to sign the listing agreement. So now that we've decided that we're going to sell the property, make sure that you have your paperwork saying that you are the executor of the estate or you are the administrator of the estate, because it gives you non-intervention powers to be able to do everything that needs to be done to liquidate the property and the assets inside the estate. Make sure that you have informed all the beneficiaries that that are going to be heirs to the net proceeds. Usually Ray will handle this, but most of the time your cousins and them is calling me, they calling Ray, they're calling everybody to find out how much the house is worth and how much money I'm going to get, right? Your cousins and them. So be prepared for that. Make sure you document all the work that you have done in regards to the estate, so the other heirs can see how much work you are doing, because I don't think people realize how much work really goes into being an executor or administrator of an estate. You're filing paperwork, you're closing out accounts, you're opening up bank accounts, you're meeting with me, you're meeting with Ray, you're meeting here, you're doing that, you're cleaning out the property, there's just all type of things that you're doing, and sometimes it's really tiresome. So not only are you working your full-time job, you're raising your kids, you're trying to, run your own household, but then also you got to make sure that you get all of this stuff done, and sometimes it's not going to take a couple of weeks. It's going to take months, and sometimes it could take years. So make sure you document everything that you are doing so your cousins and them can understand that this is hard work and it's going to take some time. Get an appraisal for the property that will be for sale. This is a safe and proactive strategy to make sure that you are pricing the property correct. So this happens at every single estate. I don't think I've had one where it's not happened. Only time that I've had it happen if it's only 1 or 2 people. But most of the time we're dealing with 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 heirs to the property. And there's always somebody that thinks that the house is worth more than what it really is. We have a market analysis on the property. We have a certified appraisal on the property. The court has approved the price. And your cousin says, that house is in the CD, and I know they buying up the properties, and that house worth $1 million. That house ain't worth no $550. Well, it's barely standing on the foundation. So I'm not sure who's going to pay $1 million for this property. But there's always one that says that the house is worth more, and that's the one that's going to contest the will or try and take you to court. So make sure you got your paperwork together. And I always say, like for me, what I like to do is I love to sit down with the executor and the heirs all at the same time and say, here is all the information. You can look at it for yourself. So then there's not a question once we start this whole process. So make sure that your agent is able to sit down and talk with everyone. It's not easy to do either, to sit down and talk to 5 people and 2 or 3 of them ain't on the same page. But, you know, I'm used to doing this, so I ain't scared of y'all. Ask about the marketing program that they will be using during the listing process. It is key to gain maximum exposure for the property and for the overall success of the sale. Always ask a lot of questions. How are you going to market the property? Is it going to be sold as is? How long is it going to take for the home to sell? Who will be able to sell the home? Is it going to be an open house? Will we have an estate sale? Like, you need to know all of those things. So, and the more you know, so then when you're sitting down interviewing the real estate professional, you can ask lots of questions. So just keep yourself informed. Options. So this is the fun part. The options that you have inside of an estate in regards to real estate. So you can keep the property and use it as rental income and sell it later because you think the value will go up. More than likely it will. Or you can just sell the property right away and disperse the funds to all the beneficiaries and be done with it. So what I would like to do, and here's where the fun stories will come in at, is I'm going to go over the pros and cons of keeping the property. The easy thing to do is to say, okay, I'm going to sell the house, disperse the funds, and move on about my business. The hard thing is to figure out is should we keep it. So let's go over the pros and cons. So the first one is that you can have extra income. So you'll start to receive extra income because now you're receiving rental income on the property, so which is great. Then there's the long-term profit that you probably could have. So now the home is appreciating over time, and then maybe you've decided that we're going to sell the house in 3 to 5 years. And the last thing is where this whole thing comes together at is creating a legacy for the family. So how do we create a legacy for the family if we decide to keep the property? So let me give you an example. So I'm working with someone right now. We don't have the property on the market. We've just been talking for about 8 months. So she was left a property by her father. There was probably about a $25,000 mortgage left on the property. So she came to me and said, Rache, I want to sell the property. And I said, okay. I said, but however, you live in the neighborhood that just is getting ready to go through the upzoning. So I'm pretty sure that in another 10 months to a year, you're probably going to be able to sell this property for double. And so, see, that's the other job that you should have as a real estate professional, to make sure that they're looking out for your best interests. So if I would have put her home on the market and sold it 8 months ago, I would have sold it for $500,000. It's a 500 square foot house in the CD. You go like this, and you've seen the whole house. But the land is valuable. And I said I knew that the property was getting ready to go through the up zone. And so her property was going to go from single family to L1, which you can do townhouses on. So all your investors, all your big boys want to buy up all the property in the CD, as we know. So I said, if we hold on and wait and see if they're going to vote in the up zone, I probably could sell your property for double. So this past Tuesday, they passed the up zone. So we're probably going to be able to sell her house for $900,000 to $1 million. That's life-changing. Remember I said that? So now what she's going to do is, so our plan, we think, she's going to sell that property. She's going to take the proceeds because she'll own the property basically free and clear. And she said, Rache, this is what I think I want to do. I want to go to South King County where her money will go a lot further. I want to buy a property for myself. Then I want to buy an income property and put it in my grandkids' name for my grandkids, or put it in my will for my grandkids. Then I want to take some money and I want to give it to this community, give it to my college, give it to the church, whatever the case may be. So that is how she kept her father's legacy alive. So she didn't just sell the house when he died, she lived in it. And then she said, okay, now it's time for me to sell it. But then she was able to talk to me, and I was able to say, okay, well, let's see if we can double this money. So we did. So we will be able to. So that is the way that you create a legacy through real estate. And that's a beautiful story. So now there's the ugly side, the cons. So let's talk about that. So you're going to have to start paying taxes. So if the family says, we decide that we want to keep the property and we want to use it as rental income for a little while. So you're going to be paying property taxes and you're going to be paying taxes on the rental income, and you're going to have to file taxes on that. You're going to need money for repairs and maintenance just to keep the house up, because we all know tenants are not always the best at keeping things up sometimes. So you will have like maintenance for paint and furnishing the servicing the furnace and hot water tank issues and painting and all those good things. You'll need landlord insurance. I highly recommend that if you are going to keep a property that you received in an estate, that you use a property manager. If you have never been a landlord before, don't try, because it's not for everyone. And property management fees will probably run you about 8 to 10% of the monthly income. It's worth it. Emergencies you're going to have to account for. So roof starts leaking, the basement floods, the hot water tank goes out, the furnace goes out. All of those things could be costly emergencies. And then you could have legal issues. You might have to evict the tenant at some point in time because they're not paying rent or they violated the lease. But the biggest thing is letting go the emotional ties you have to the property. And I don't think a lot of people take this into consideration. Your mother and father have been living in that home for 30 years. You decided, I'm going to keep it as a rental for a little while. So now you get this little couple that comes in. They have a dog. You say, I don't want the dog, but okay, I'll take them. They seem nice. But your parents, they're out there. They have taken care of the yard. Your mom's had a garden, blah, blah, blah. And now these nice little tenants that you thought was so nice have came along. They done tore up the garden. They don't mow the grass. They just not taking care of the property. There's old junk cars in the driveway. And those are emotional ties that can really cost you, is because being a homeowner and being a landlord is two different things. Being a homeowner is really emotional. Being a landlord is all about business, and it's all about dollars, and it's all about numbers. So you have to decide what side of the fence you're going to be on. Are you going to stay on this emotional side? And if you can't let those emotions go, then you probably shouldn't be a landlord. But if you think that you can handle being a landlord and dealing with some of these issues, then go right ahead. It could work out for you. However, let me get to my first story. It's called the weed house. So we live in a state that marijuana is legal. And we live in a state that you can grow weed in your house if you have a card or two. And, but for the most part, we know that most of these weed houses are not legal and they don't have cards. So I had a client decided to keep their parents' property over in Rainier Valley. They rented it to a nice little Asian couple in their 40s, no kids, no nothing. They just wanted to live there. They worked downtown Seattle and it was close to the rail and blah, blah, blah. So probably about 9 to 10 months into the lease, the owner gets a call from the city of Seattle, Seattle City Light, and says, we noticed that the electricity bill is awfully high. You guys might need to go out and check your meter. Or we can send somebody out there to check the meter for you. So they said, okay, do both. So then, you know, my client was like, well, I'll just go out there. They seem really nice. We haven't had any problems with them, so I'll go out and see what's going on. They go, they knock on the door, and you can smell the weed walking up to the house. Like, you can. And so the husband's opened up the door and he's like, hey, we just wanted to, you know, see if we could get in and check and see, are you guys having any issues with the electricity, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh no, everything is fine. We're not having any issues. He said, well, the city of Seattle. So by this time when the door opens, he's like, oh yeah, something is really going on because it just hit you in the face, you know? And so, he was like, well, we would like to be able to get inside and look at the electrical box and see if something is wrong. And he's like, no, everything is fine. So he didn't give notice that he was coming over. So he leaves. He calls me. He's like, well, what should I do? I was like, well, just send him a written notice to saying that you want to come in and inspect the property because you can do that as an owner. They don't respond. They don't respond. So we waited about 5 days. We sent out another letter again. So then I called to say I was the real estate agent. I'm the new property manager and I'm just going to come out and inspect the property. They don't know. So, no response from me either. So I was like, you're probably going to have to send them a 20-day pay or vacate because that will make them, that there will be an action there. So either they're going to call you, something's going to happen, right? About 10 days passed. I don't get anything. He doesn't get a call. We roll up there literally. House is vacant. They've gone. We get inside the house and the basement is completely tore up. There's about 30 empty pots where they have been growing plants. They have all these. So these kind of lights right here were in the basement. They got hoses with water, filtrate systems, like everything. The house is completely tore up. So now they have to decide that. So we knew that going in that house was probably worth about between $450 and $475 before they decided to rent it. But now we have all this damage in the basement. The house is probably worth in the threes. So now they don't really have the money to go into the repair the house. So now I'm selling the house at a loss where I could have sold it for $475. So, because even the little bit of rental income that they got for 10 to 11 months wasn't enough to cover the repairs that needed to be done. So those are some of the cons and those are some of the legal issues that you will deal with in the state of Washington. And I can actually say in the last 5 years, I've probably sold 7 to 9 weed houses. And every single one of them is bad. Every single one of them. So before you decide to become a landlord, you should really think about all of these issues that you could face and if you're willing to deal with them. And then sometimes you can't get these people out of your house, especially if you own a house in the city of Seattle. City of Seattle has some of the worst landlord-tenant laws if you are a landlord. So those are things that you really have to think about before you decide if you want to keep the property. So that's my weed story. next slide. The realtor will also be able to help you find an appraiser, surveyors, and other real estate professionals that you may need to sell the real estate. And the realtor can offer you ideas on how to increase the value of the property by doing some basic repairs. It is recommended that you check with the accountant before to be sure that you are not creating any tax liabilities by doing this. Again, I always recommend to sell the house as is. A lot of people think, well, if we just change the carpet and do a little paint, then that's going to get us another $50,000. Well, not when the kitchen hasn't been remodeled since 1973 and the bathroom ain't been remodeled since 1973 and we have green shag carpet and yellow walls. So I'm being honest. And so it's not worth it sometimes, the headache that you're going to even cause yourself dealing with the contractor to come out and remodel the property. Just sell the property as is. Just make it broom clean. Clean everything out of the house. Cut the grass, cut the bushes back, and whatever money you're supposed to get out of it, it's a bonus anyway. Don't spend your time on remodeling. It is a headache. And sometimes you're not going to make the money out of it. So it's not worth it to do. Costly mistakes. Great segue. Second, selecting the wrong service provider to help you liquidate the estate and prepare it for sale. Like I said, could cost you tens to up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you find, what I find sometimes is that people will say, oh, I'm going to use my niece. She's a part-time agent. She works at King County, and she got her license, so I'm going to use her to sell the real estate. How many properties has she sold? Oh, she probably sold 5 properties in the last 10 years. Okay. And these are true stories. And so when you're selling the property out of an estate, the goal is to get as much money as you can out of the property. And not only that, you just want to make sure that it's done properly because you can get into trouble. Me and Ray have dealt with several estates where the executor or the administrator is not doing their job right. The court has to take the property away from them and name a third party, right? And so you have to be smart enough to know that I might not be able to use my niece, and then your niece or your nephew might really give you, havoc about it and make you feel guilty about it. But you could say, well, maybe you could partner with the real estate agent and learn. So the next time it happens, you'll have some experience. But please don't do that. Don't use your friend that's a part-time agent. Don't use your neighbor that has been in the business for 15 years and he sells 2 homes a year, and them 2 homes probably weren't estate sales. Just don't do it to yourself. It's okay to interview several agents to find out who is the best fit for you. The other mistake is thinking the probate process will only take a few weeks and relying on your attorney to handle everything. When you enter into an agreement to sell the property, you enter into basically a team. I'm the team member, the attorney is a team member, and you're a team member. So it's all teamwork together. So don't think that I've hired Rache and I've hired Ray. Now I'm going to go back to doing my regular job and everything is going to work out rosy. That's not going to happen. We have to work together. You have your job to do. I have my job to do, and Ray has his job to do. The biggest thing is not securing the estate, personal property, and or the house. We see this all the time. Mom has died. The very next day or 2, people are in the house stealing the stuff. Daddy's ring is gone. The painting is gone. Mama's fur coat is gone. All the pictures is gone. And so you, as the administrator or the executor, the first thing you should do is change the locks. Because you don't know who your mama and daddy then gave the keys to. So that's the first thing you do, is lock up that house. Then secondly, at some point in time, you're going to have to sit down and take inventory. and go through everything that you feel that is worth something in that house and that somebody's going to come back and fight you about. So like I said, paintings, jewelry, antiques, any of that. Because and those are the items, again, that you want to get appraised. Maybe everybody does not want that nice painting your mom got from Spain in 1973. You know, maybe nobody has room for the baby grand piano anymore, but it's beautiful and it's nice. So we need to go out and find an estate company, again, to be able to give us a price on that. And can we have an estate sale? So an estate sale can be really good. So let's just say your mother and father had beautiful antiques and there's a lot of things in the house, but no one in the family wants them, right? So instead of giving them to the Goodwill or throwing them away or, you know, giving them to some organization and there's some money to be had out of those items, you can have an estate sale. So prior to us putting the home on the market, if we've had this estate company come in, they will price everything out. Over the weekend, we'll have the houses open, we'll have an estate sale, and you'd be surprised how many people come to these estate sales. And by the end of the weekend, more than half of the furniture that you were agonizing over how to get out of, it's already gone. So you can consider that as well. And then sometimes we find a buyer through while we're having the estate sale, we will find a buyer for the house as well. You never know. So make sure those things you secure, those personal properties are very important, and making sure that the house stays insured. A lot of people let the insurance lapse on the property. All you have to do is call the insurance company who your parents had, your aunt had, or who grandparents had the house insured with, and let them know that they have died, the house is vacant, and it's going for sale. They will put the proper insurance on the property. So make sure you do that. The other thing is make sure you understand the temperature of the market. What's going on in the real estate market now? Is it hot? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Should I sell in the springtime? Should I sell in the winter? So let's just say that you received the home out of the estate in October. And we know now we're getting ready to go into the winter months. And it can work for you and against you, because we know going into the winter months, there's less homes on the market. But we also know that the buyers that are out there looking to buy properties are very serious. But we also know, too, the buyer that's probably going to buy this estate house is going to be an investor. So he's going to try and get the property for as least amount of money as he can. However, but if you can take your time and get the property cleaned out, have the house locked up, coming into the springtime for a seller might be your best bet to put the home on the market, because we know that March is the month where you can make the most money when you sell the house. The highest number of homes are sold every single year in the month of March. So remember that even when you're selling your own personal property. March and April, if you're going to be a seller and sell your home, sell in those months. Is because even though there's more competition, but there's more buyers out there. So keep that in mind. So know the market that you're dealing with. So my last story it's a funny story. And this is a story that I want to tell, is when you don't have a will and you know that you got crazy kids in your household. Me and Ray worked on this estate last summer. There's 4 brothers and sisters. 1 lives out of state, 3 live here, 1 lived with dad until he died. And that was the crack kid. That was 60-something years old. He did have a will. Yeah, so he had the will. But remember, they wanted to contest the will. So they were mad that the sister that was out of state was the executor of the estate. They couldn't believe it. So after we got Ray on board, the 3 brothers and sisters was trying to kick the one that was named the executor, and called Ray and told Ray, well, just don't bother with her, and then you just work with us, and then we can get the house, because we don't want her to get no money no way. This is a true story. And so I'm talking and so the executor is my client. So we're talking back and forth on the phone, and every day she would call me crying, I can't believe my brothers and sisters are treating me like this. They cussing me out. They calling me all kind of names and blah, 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 and telling me I hope I die and blue, 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 blue. It's true. She prayed for her sister's plane to crash when she was coming home to take care of the estate. But the crackhead, but I couldn't believe, so I kept saying, they're not talking to her like that. This is an honest story. So I said, well, I have to go over there and see the house anyway. I said, so let me go over to the house and talk to her. I said, because I'm used to talking to crazy folks anyway. I said, it'll be fine. I don't know, you shouldn't go over there, girl, because you know she's going to be acting crazy. So I was like, I got this. I'm from Oakland. So I go over, so I told her, I said, call your sister and tell your sister I'm coming over at this time. I go over to the house. So it's midday. It's probably about 1 o'clock. This chick answers the door. She got on her robe and, you know, she all covered up. She got the cigarette hanging out her mouth. So you know how the old mechanic used to have the cigarette hanging out his mouth and he's like fixing the car? So that's how she answered the door. Oh, hey, Miss Rache. Oh, you're the nice real estate agent lady. Oh, okay. I'm so happy to see you. Come on in. And I'm thinking to myself, she can't be talking to Bridget. She can't be talking to her like that. She can't be cussing her out and calling her all kind of names. Oh, yes, I just don't know what to do. I miss Daddy so much. Oh, y'all gonna sell the house. Oh, thank you, Lord Jesus. Am I gonna get some money? This is the way that she's talking to me. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what is this girl talking about on the phone? Like, this lady is not cussing her out and talking to her crazy. No sooner than I get back in my car, I might be 5 blocks down the road. My client calls me on the phone. Do you believe she didn't call me? Because you better not never have that MF real estate agent come over here again. I ain't letting her in the house. But blah, y'all gonna have to drag me out this house. I ain't getting out this house. This is Daddy's house. And Daddy wanted me to have the house. And Daddy wanted me to have the car. So she acting a fool. So I said, okay. So now we have the 3. So remember, there's 2 other brothers and sisters here. The good reverend. The brother called himself the good reverend. So remember I said that you have to take a personal inventory of all the stuff. He done stole Daddy's rings. The good reverend, that's what he called himself. Well, Ray called and said, well, do you know so-and-so is a reverend? I said, who? He said he called himself the good reverend. And then there was the other sister. She was like, I don't care what you do. Just give me my money. I don't care. I don't got time. Hurry up. I don't care what you guys got to do. So, sometimes it's funny to me. It's sad, but it's funny. So, because I'm used to dealing with these kind of people all the time. Every day, they calling Ray, and they cussing and yelling. They trying to undercut the sister over here, this and that. So I had to figure out a way to get the car sold because she didn't want anybody to come over. She wasn't going to let them come and take the car at the garage and blah, blah, blah. It's just on and on and on. So, day of closing. Now, let me back up really fast. So we got an offer on the property. I always make the buyer release the money, the earnest money, non-refundable. I always want the earnest money to be non-refundable. We put it in escrow, but I said that I wanted some of that money to be released to the crazy sister that's inside the house because we need her to make sure that she get out of this house. Because the buyer said, if she ain't out this house, I'm not closing. So we decided we was going to give her about $3,000. So I don't know where you're going to go, what you're going to do, but you got to get out of here. I don't care what you do. So we released the money to her. So coming up to closing, so we feel she knows I'm driving by the house. She don't look like she ain't did nothing. She ain't moved out. So day of closing comes, the morning of closing comes. My client calls me and says, she's not out the house. What we going to do? I said, well, the buyer is not closing. I was like, so y'all gonna have to figure out something real quick. And I was like, you got to go pull her out the house, whatever you have to do. I said, well, let me call her first to see what, maybe she gonna be out. So now I got really friendly with her, so I can call her like this. Hey girl, it's Rache. How you doing? Oh, okay. Are you leaving today? Like, you need to be at the house by 4 o'clock. The house is closing today. I I told you I ain't going nowhere. Well, I said, well, that's why we gave you the money. I needed that money to live. I need to go get me some cigarettes and get me something to drink and get me something to eat. I ain't going nowhere. I told you, y'all got to pull me out this house. I said, oh, okay. Okay. I said, all right, well, we'll see you around 4 o'clock. So then I said, okay, I was like, we could have the doors taken off. So that's what my uncle used to do back in Indiana. So then I was like, well, I said, let me call my client back again. I said, do you have anybody, the good reverend, the sister, her son, somebody to get her out of this house so we can get this property closed? Her son literally at 4:30 that afternoon had to come and pull her out of that house. And when I say pull, I mean drag. So what I'm saying to you nice little parents who about to do your will, make sure that you designate the right person for the executor, and then make sure that you make some provisions for that crack baby that's living in your house at the age of 61 years old with no job for 20 years. Because these are the things that we have to deal with as professionals. And it's not easy. I don't want to see that lady dragged out of the house. She don't have no job, so she couldn't go get an apartment. She probably had to go get a motel or something like that, and she didn't probably spent up all the money because they all got a nice chunk of change out of this estate. But I'm pretty sure she didn't smoked up or used all her money. And so these are some of the things that we have to deal with. And I don't like it. It is sad. It's funny at the time, but it's sad and it's real serious. So just make sure that when you're going through and making your will, you're thinking about where property is going to go, who is going to be, as Ray said, who is going to be the voice when you're in the grave. Your will is your voice while you're in the grave. Make sure that you can detail out everything that you can in your will, so then when it comes to us as the professionals, it's easy, but it's also hard on you. So just think about if you're the executor. Your mother has left you as the executor, and then you got to deal with all your cousins and them acting the fool. Sit down with your mom and dad and say, Mom, why don't we detail this out? Why don't we say that so-and-so get the baby grand and so-and-so get the property, or the property is to be sold at this time, or whatever the case may be. Be as detailed as you can. It helps. It helps us, that's the living that's still here. You know? And I think you would probably rest a little better in the grave. I want to go over a few questions that you should ask, and it's in your packet here that you can take with you, of the things that you should always ask a real estate agent when you're interviewing them to be your probate real estate agent. How do you interview a probate real estate agent? Asking the right questions can help you understand the process and determine which agent can best assist you in selling your probate or trust property. Be sure to consider the benefits of specialized knowledge and years of experience as you interview the real estate agent. How long, some of the questions, how long have you been selling probate? That makes a big difference. So I think I've been selling probate properties for 15 years. You don't get them all the time, but I probably sell anywhere from 2 to 5 a year. So I have a lot of experience under my belt, you know, of working with them. They've been really easy, and some of them have been really, really hard. So make sure that when you pick the professional to find out what their resume is, can you give me some references, you know, so you can talk to them and find out, or can I talk to the attorneys that you've dealt with? The other thing is what sets them apart from other real estate agents. What are they going to do? Are they assertive? Are they aggressive? Do they know how to get the most money for the property? Are they going to be able to market it correctly? Do they know how to talk to the right people and the right professionals to make sure that they can get the house sold for you? How will you market the home? Very, very important. Estate sales are not your traditional sales. So you, like I said, again, you always want to market the property as is. You want to market it to investors. You want to market it to out-of-state investors. You want to make sure that it's online everywhere. You want to make sure that You can have an open house if you decide that you want an open house. You want to be able to make sure that it's on the market for the right amount of time. A lot of times for me, when I sell an estate property, I will market it really aggressively, and I'm going to say the house goes on the market on Thursday. We're going to review all offers on Wednesday. So now you have this whole week, because people love these estate properties, because some of the times you're getting them at a little bit of a discount because they are a fixer. And as we know, fixers here in Washington are really hot right now, right? So now we might be able to get multiple offers on the property, and that's the key. So can I put this home on the market, and can I get 2 to 5 offers? Because now we're looking for the best and highest offer. All cash, closing soon, no contingencies. So that's what you want. Make sure that your agent is skilled. They know the documents that are needed to close the property. They know what documents are needed and not needed. So one of the things you don't need in the state of Washington is a real property disclosure statement. That goes with every single real estate sale in the state of Washington. When it's an estate sale, you do not have to use the property disclosure statement. That statement reads of like, do you know if the roof leaked? Is the foundation cracked? Are there electrical issues? You don't know because you're the beneficiary of the property. And that's why I say you don't want to remodel the property, because now you open up yourself to this questionnaire. When it's an estate sale, when you sell it as is, you don't have to, the property disclosure statement is waived. So that's a big thing for you, because now you have no liability. So which is beautiful. My last thing that I wanted to go over, and I'm just going to, is just for you, for your reading. And Pastor, I think that we should consider doing this in the future, talking about downsizing for our seniors. Huge. Huge. So your mother has died, dad is in the house, and he's living in a 3,000 square foot house. He has health issues. He can't get up and down the steps. He can't maintain the home anymore. Property taxes are rising. Cost of living is high. And he's struggling trying to still live in that house. You should consider helping your parents figure out how to downsize. And the biggest thing that I see of why our seniors, my mother was one of them, didn't want to downsize is because all of the junk. All of the clutter, all the stuff in the basement, all the stuff in the garage, and then the fear of moving. I've been here for 35 years. Where am I going to go? I don't want to go live in the senior shag apartment. I don't want to go move down south. I want to stay right here in my community. But that house is no longer for them. And it's just getting run down and run down and run down. So that is something that we really should talk about and consider, is because I see it all the time. And I've had clients literally die in their home because they didn't downsize. They fell down the steps, you know, different things like that. So that's a topic that we should have at some point in time. Good. Okay, great. Yeah, that's so important. So I want to say thank you for coming and spending your time with me. I hope my presentation was helpful to you. Please take this. I think get a box, get a toolbox. Take all of the information that you've learned from Ray, from Keith, from myself, and everyone else that you will hear the next couple of weeks. Put it in a box. That's your toolbox. You're going to need it. So if it's just the basics, so when this situation arises, or when your cousin is dealing with it, whatever, you say, hey, okay, this is what happens now. Okay, now we go to step A. Okay, now we at step B. This will help you. This is your guideline. This is your tools that you need. Use it. And then call somebody if you need some help. Okay, thank you. Can I answer any questions for anyone? Oh, microphone is right here. Oh, yes.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation. Give her another round of applause. A couple of points I want to hit, and I thought about it during her presentation, and I should have mentioned it, but Ms. Boston was able to jog my memory. With respect to an estate, administrative expenses, legal fees, your probate costs that you pay, for example, if there's no money in the estate, but it's all tied up in the stocks and bonds and real estate, those expenses that you put out of your pocket are immediately reimbursable to you. So you don't have to wait for baby and them to get theirs first. You get yours right off the top. That's the administrative fees and costs in terms of priority. Market analysis. You can use your market analysis, which the real estate agent would do for you. You could save yourself thousands of dollars for appraisal. The court will accept a market analysis, a bona fide market analysis, in lieu of an appraisal for your inventory. I know I'm saying a lot of things, and it's kind of technical, but I was inspired. She inspired me with these thoughts and memories. So you could use the market analysis, which will serve in lieu of an appraisal, and it's free. In the last story she gave you about the crackhead, and I'm not ashamed to mention crackhead, she was in the house, and I insisted with the executor to charge her rent because it's a debt to the estate. You're supposed to pay rent. If not, she can be evicted. But, it was an emotional thing. I can't get beyond that. Because I'm coming in as the objective professional, and it's an emotional thing. So I have to be tolerant of that. But you can, and you're entitled to rent for someone staying in the property if they're, because they have a right, and you can't evict them. And I would have evicted her, but my boss, the administrator, the executrix, told me not to do it, and so I had to abide by that. Videotape your assets. Videotape your assets. And this is a great case study in that the people went in and started pulling stuff out of the estate, taking rings and jewelry, and my client was crying. She was in tears because her dad left her all those things. And you have these people making decisions for the testator. This is what the man wanted, and you're coming in and taking the stuff, snatching it because you think you have a right to it. There's a sense of entitlement. Videotape the assets. I learned something today. The disclosure statement. I wondered why it wasn't done in probate, but it makes sense now, and it's intuitive. And I'm glad you brought that up because I wasn't aware of it before. There was a logical, legal reason behind it. Thank you, and you've been a wonderful audience, and you now may ask your questions, but I wanted to get it off my mind.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have two questions. First of all, Ray answered my first questions about the videotaping the assets. My second question is to you, Rochelle. Is it Roche?
Rache.
Well, thank you, Roche. That was a very, very good presentation.
Thank you.
And I have a question regarding the pros and cons of keeping the property.
Yes, sir.
And under the cons, you mentioned about landlord insurance, and I wanted to know what's the difference between landlord insurance and insurance on investment property?
Well, it's this. So the landlord investment property would basically be the same. So you should have more insurance as a landlord investment property versus just a regular homeowner. So you might want to get what they call an umbrella policy, where you could take out $1 million worth of insurance on the household. Say, for instance, the tenant had someone come over, they're having a party, they fall and break their leg, and then they want to come back and sue you. So instead of suing you or the estate, that umbrella policy will kick in and cover them. So that's the kind of insurance that you would want to have. Right? Okay.
I think what you're asking is landlord versus personal property, or if you're the homeowner. With that, as a landlord, you only insure the house itself, the roof, the physical house. If you're the owner of the house, then you insure your furniture, your TV, your refrigerator, and all like that. Landlord, you just insure in the house. And With that, you might want to save money by taking out a higher deductible, and you can reduce your expenses.
Thank you for your presentation. You've mentioned out-of-state property, and most of us live here or have always lived here. So how do you go about finding someone to handle the property that is out of state when you will have to address those who will pass away?
So you should.
Is there an organization that you could?
So hopefully your real estate professional will be able to provide you with some referrals. So for instance, I belong to a organization called Leading RE of the World. So as Reverend Braxton said, I can get an agent for you in Arkansas, or I can get an agent for you in Japan. So the real estate professional should be well connected to be able to help you with those type of properties all over the world. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Question on selling of property, like land. If the land has, you also own the mineral rights.
Oh, yeah.
Can you sell the land and retain the mineral rights, or do you have to sell both of them at the same time?
I'm going through that right now, my own self, and I'm trying to figure that out. So what I've learned so far is that you always want to own the mineral rights, because that's where the money is. And also, before you even decide, depending on where the land is located, if there's timber on the property, sell the timber first. Then find a mineral rights attorney in that state to find out what they suggest that you do. I'm literally going through this right now with my own property. So we've decided that we'll never sell our land. We'll never sell any of it, but we want to keep, but from my understanding is you can sell the land, but you want to maintain the mineral rights always, and you're going to have to do that through an attorney. You're welcome.
Good morning. You piqued my interest when you mentioned will and property. You make a decision that you want to dispose of the property. How might you document the considerations for the timing of that sale? What might that look like? Because you mentioned that you might want to hold on to it in a down market, sell it in an up market, but the will probably specifically says sell and split asset with the remaining people.
Well, if the will has a date to say you have to sell the real estate upon death immediately, then you just have to sell the real estate. But if there is no stipulation in there, then just say it's just you and your sister, example. And now it's December, and you say, okay, well, when should we sell the property? I'm just going to kind of go historically looking. We know that the winter months are the down times in real estate. So you just want to know the market and figure out when the best time it is to sell the property. Or you can say, okay, well, maybe we could hold on to it for a year, and maybe you're going to live in it, or maybe you'll have your son live in it. And like Ray said, you could charge him a little bit of rent to see when it's the best time to sell. Are we in the down market right now? And if we wait a couple of years, will we be able to sell the property for a little bit more? That's just a decision that, you can make, right?
Yeah. Let me add also that, and this is another reason why you should have a will. Generally, they're all good reasons. In the will, you always provide non-intervention powers. Wow, that's a big word. Means that the court, you don't have to go back to court for every single question. And it gives the personal representative, the executor, executrix, total power to make those determinations. So if the executrix decides that she doesn't want to sell it right now because it's October, it's raining, we haven't seen the sun all month, and nobody's out buying, if she's reasonable in her assessment and her analysis, and she consults with a professional and says, it's not a good time to sell, we'll get the best price, and it's not going to cost the estate too much more to do that, then it's she has complete autonomy to make that decision. So that's when it will be. Now, if the will says you must sell immediately, then you have to sell immediately. It's what the will says. But generally, it gives the personal representative executrix a lot of power to make that determination. Yeah, you allow non-intervention powers. Oh, can you put that in the will? Yeah, you could put language in there to sell the property immediately, but you always have in the will granting non-intervention power and that no bond be required. Those are just standard language in the will. You don't have a will, the court will require you to come back to do every itty-bitty thing. It's expensive. Lawyers love it because it's an hour from my office to the court. I wait another hour. That's 3 hours over some BS. I know I'm going to get it. You could have gotten it over the phone, but you don't have that authority. You don't have that luxury. So do the will, non-intervention power, no bond required. Usually, the court requires you to put up a $10,000 bond. It's a $100 fee. A lot of people don't have it. So you as a lawyer end up fronting it, and then when assets are sold, you're reimbursed. And no bond. And no bond, posting of the bond for the estate. If you don't have a will, then the person who is acting as the administrator has to be able to qualify for a bond. And that's why you can't have a felony record or a theft record as a misdemeanor, because you're not bondable.
So the crack baby can't be the executor of the estate.
No, you could be a crackhead and not be convicted.
Well, that's true. Non-intervention powers and no bond.
Under your costly mistakes and how to avoid them, if I have vacant property in out of state, do I need to have property insurance on that property?
Oh, yes, for sure. If that property burns down.
If there's nothing on that property.
Land.
Just land.
Vacant land?
That's.
No, you just want to make sure that nobody's farming on it or put the trailer on it. No, you don't need insurance for vacant land. Well, that's true. Any question? So her question was if somebody got hurt on vacant land. Ray, that's a question for you.
That's a good question. You could use it for that. Somebody trips and falls on your property. You could use that. Or Rache mentioned earlier the umbrella policy. So you have a house in Seattle, State Farm. You could get $1 million umbrella policy for about $349 a year. And it would $100, and so it covers you for all the other properties, liability. That is so, yeah. You would want if you're an absentee owner, meaning that you're living out of the state where your property is. It might be a good idea to have some type of liability insurance. One second. Another thing is, if you're out of state, you want to make sure that somebody is watching your property, because you don't want to get subject to adverse possession, meaning that if you're not there for over 10 years in most states, somebody squats on your land, you might not be the owner after 10 years.
Even what?
Even if you're paying property tax and you haven't been there for 10 years?
I'll give you an example. My family owned another 4 acres in Texas. The cousin in LA was the one to watch over that 4 acres. We thought that she was watching over it. Come to find out, they built a BMW dealership over our 4 acres.
That's what I wanted to know.
That is, and that is from not taking care of the property and not watching it and not going down and visiting it. Things like that happen all the time.
Thank you. I think what Daryl is asking, though, is in Washington State, there are 2 ways. 8 years if you pay the taxes. If I, as a squatter, pay your taxes, I only have to be on it for 8 years. 10 years if I don't pay the taxes and I'm living in it, looking like I'm the owner. So even if you pay the taxes, it's 10 years.
Rache, this is a question for you.
Yes, sir.
And you sparked my interest when you said you have, land in Texas, and I have land in Texas, and I have quite a few aunts and uncles, and they're drilling on that property in Texas, and we don't know how to get everyone together to strategize on how to, get the oil companies to pay us money or more money. So how do you deal with a situation like that?
Offline, get an attorney, but I can probably help you with that because we have that situation going on. But you have to get a minerals attorney, ASAP. So any other questions? Yes, Anita. Oh.
Just a question about what you said. The sister that wouldn't leave the house, the person, could you get the sheriff to move them?
Oh yeah, we would have to go through a full eviction. So let's just play that out really fast. So let's just say that situation does happen and the sister doesn't want to get out the house. So now we have to go through a legal eviction. So now we got to call Ray. Ray has to go through the proper procedure to evict her. And then, so what could happen in that case, maybe the buyer says, I'm not waiting for the eviction. I'm out. So now we done lost the buyer. We dealing with her, getting her evicted and things like that. But yes, we would have to evict her, and then that's another 30 or 45 days, right, Ray? So, I mean, those are all the things that happen when, you don't have a will. But even when you do have a will and you're just dealing with baby and them, I'm being serious. I mean, I can't put it any blunt. I mean, I see this stuff all the time. And so sometimes I'm numb to it when I go into these situations sometimes because I'm like, here's another one. And so when I do get the good ones, I'm like, thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. You know what I mean? It's a plus. Yes. As a tenant. Yes, they do. Squatters have the same right. But, you can use some of them tactics, So my family comes from the Midwest and, from Oakland. And so a couple of my friends call it the OJ kit. That's a skull cap. Flashlight. Okay, talk to me offline about that, We know how to get them out easy, too, without all the legal stuff. But, Ray, you didn't hear that from me.
What's the difference between squatting and trespassing?
Same. It's the same. But here's what can happen. So let's just say that you do have a vacant house, Reverend Braxton. If you put a no trespassing sign up, if there's no trespassing signs around the property, you can call the police and the police can come and remove them because because they have violated the no trespassing signs. But if there's no trespassing signs out there and they are squatters, you're going to have to go through the same situation if you had to evict a tenant that had a lease or whatever. But the squatter and the trespassing is really no difference. The only difference is that I had a sign up that said no trespassing, so the police would go out and kick them out. I had that happen too in Kent, so they'll come out and kick them out if there's a no trespassing sign. So I had a property that was for sale. It was a foreclosure. We had squatters in there. So the police came back and said, if you put some no trespassing signs up. So they actually removed it. He said, but they're going to come back. So I went down the Lowe's. I got 5 no trespassing signs. I taped them up all around the house. I got one up on top high. So then when they did come back, then the police was able to remove them. That's the difference. That's all you need.
But my understanding locally is that the squatter has to be there at least 30 days.
Sometimes you don't know how long the squatter has been there.
But that's the timeline before before they can assume squatters' rights, or you have to evict them. Just like if I let somebody come and stay in my house and they stay there for 30 days, the 30 days is the point in which I'd have to evict. But at 20 days, I can say, you know what, you got to go.
Right.
But at 30 days, I have to evict them. even if it's like a guest kind of thing.
They're called a tenant at will.
Yeah.
And you just give them notice to move.
Right. But it has to be, but if it's after
No.
30 days, isn't there a 30-day rule?
No, hold on. They're tenant at will. They're not paying rent.
Right.
They have no legal right to be there. Somebody comes to your house, say, baby comes from out of town, say, baby, I'm going to be here for just a couple of days. Can you put me up? 30 days later, baby is still there.
Right.
Okay? They're a squatter. Tenant at will, that's the fancy name. Call them squatters. Then you just give them notice, hey, you need to get out of here. If they're not out, then you can move them out. Not physically, because if it's going to disturb the peace, but you could have the sheriff come and take them out.
Okay.
They're not paying rent. They're not entitled to anything. They're not a tenant.
So I had an experience similar to this where I had someone at my house and I called law enforcement and I couldn't, well, the first thing I couldn't do was touch their things.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't touch their things, and which I did, but I took pictures and I put it under, and it was nicely touched. And it was, packed up, and I took pictures of it. I didn't throw it outside.
Yeah.
Well, it was. I didn't throw it outside, so I put it out there. But the police told me that that person could, charge me for touching their things, even though they weren't paying rent. They were just kind of staying. Like you were saying, you can stay for a couple of weeks, and, a month goes by, and they're still there, and now you want them to go. I could not just put her out. I had to, file an eviction.
You don't have to go to court to get that. You give them a written notice, and if they're not out, then you get the police to come and move them out. They don't have any right. They're not a true tenant in the sense that we know it. They're not paying rent. You just allow them to stay there. They're a tenant at will.
Give our presenters a hand. Those who want to know more about the OJ methodologies of moving people, Rache said it's a meeting that never occurred. She will deny ever having talked to you. It's plausible deniability. The not touching things, I'm interested in that because, since the beginning of time, women have been throwing men's stuff outside and burning it, and now we find out you can't touch our stuff. So we need to revisit this because I think we got some legal action here. Is most men have had a few things thrown out over the years. Come to find out, men now to tell them you can't touch my stuff. Rache said that. Our time is exhausted for today. This stuff is not sexy. It's not the kind of stuff that gives you an adrenaline rush. It's the kind of I dotting, T crossing, that whether or not the I was dotted or the T was crossed can affect the financial future of your family. It can have your passing and your transitioning orderly and decent, or chaos and bad blood that's passed from generation to generation to generation. And so I say all that to say, let us show that we have the ability to, as the prophet Isaiah said, come and reason together as much as we like to enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. One writer says, one of the problems in the black community is we're constantly stimulating an already overstimulated people. But we have problems with stillness. When we hear that song, have thine own way, Lord, thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will while I am waiting, yielded and still. Some things you have to sit still to take care of. And this is the kind of thing where we have to engage our minds in a meticulous, detailed, non-exciting, but also important process to get our houses in order. We are people of great talent. Because of our history of oppression, we haven't had much, and we've come into stuff, but our skillfulness at managing it has not caught up with our ability to acquire it. And therefore it becomes like water running through our hands. It's not what you get, it's what you can hold on to and how you intelligently pass on. And that is what we're trying to do. That's why I've given this priority above any and everything. We're doing this Easter and Lenten season. Not to downplay Easter, it's the center of our faith. Easter comes every year, but we celebrate on top of a whole lot of chaos. And I have seen it happen. I saw that bomb explode when my grandmother passed, and the way things were left, it just set my mother and her siblings up for a lot of conflict, a lot of heartache, and then that conflict was passed down to the grandkids as we lined up to defend our particular mother or father. And, you know, and really the birth of New Beginnings was the opportunity for the family to come together from a division that happened starting in 1992 when my grandmother died. And so I've seen it happen, and as a pastor, we stand as kind of a crosswalk person at an ugly intersection. Something about when there's a penny to be grabbed, it brings out the worst in people. And all unresolved emotional issues get exasperated by it. So we can protect our families from the inevitable. I don't know why it's on us, but it seems to be on the hard drive. It brings out the absolute ugly in people. And so let us be about this business. Let's force ourselves to come out and sit through this and gain all this information. Develop your list. Your homework assignment remains the same this week as it was last week, and that was begin making that list of what I have, what my questions are. What was the other one? Write down your past. Where's it at, and what are the passwords? Because if you have policies and so forth, or assets, no one knows where they're at, what the passwords are, then people can't access. So what I have, second thing was what I think I want to do with it. What I have, what I think I want to do with it, and where is it at? What are the passwords? And then what my questions are. It's those four. What I have, what I think I want to do with it, where is it at, and that includes passwords, and then what my questions are, because these are the things that you will need when you sit down with folks like this. When these seminars are over and you have your own checklist of things or gaps where I know I need to give some attention to. If you walk in there with that information, they can more readily pour that into an action plan customized for you. Is that correct? Amen. So that you are protected from that crackish person in your family. And some of our family members have never used crack, but you would swear they did. They bear the behavioral traits. Yes, ma'am. Mental health. Oh, yeah. Yeah. See the way she said that? She said there's mental people. Those are terms that African Americans use, like funeralized. We're the only ones who use that term. She's mental. My grandmama used to say touched, special, mental, different. Let's stand. Stay the course. That's my message. Let's stay the course. We're about a busy day, so let's pray for our nation. Pray for our nation. I got a slogan for the 2020 election. Let's make America recognizable again. We've never been a perfect nation, but we've always been in pursuit of a more perfect union. But there have been those who've been pushing us backward into past imperfections. And we've seen people with money and power buy their way out of the reach of justice, while poor people get slammed by law that charges them maximum sentence for minimum crimes. And so now that Mr. Mueller's report is out, we're going to see if they even attempt to hold people with money and power to justice. And this is going to send a message to this country. Is there justice, or is it just us that the law is aimed for? And there's another reality if you have money and power. And so my slogan for 2020 is let's make America recognizable again, not that she was ever perfect, but recognizable in the sense that we were actually attempting to become a more perfect union. But there are clearly those that are not attempting to do so. Let's bow our heads. Eternal and everlasting God, we pray in this seminal moment in the life of our nation where laws and policies, mindsets, attitude, protocols, norms are being set in place that trickle down into establishing a culture that either lifts or seals and divides. And so, God, we just pray for the light of your wisdom, a heart of compassion, common sense, and a spirit of fairness, and an appreciation for decency and the dignity of all persons' worth and value. Thank you, O God, for these presenters who are using the cumulative wisdom of their years and their expertise to help us get our houses in order so that, God, the fruits of our life labors can seed the strides forward of ensuing generations. Protect us from the inevitable calamity and crisis that occurs when we have not prepared for life's common denominator, and that is death. See us, God, through our busy days, and let your will be done. In your name we pray, and God, we give you thanks. Amen.